I put a question for you in Padlet. Please go visit Padlet and just give me your thoughts on it and see what your understanding of this question. There would be no direct mark for it. It would be only direct of the fact that you are participating in the class activities. Please write your name first in the Padlet and give me your comment. I think the question is about the situation today with the COVID-19 and the marketing research challenges that we're going to face due to the COVID-19. Before I start the class, I would like to share a short video as usual with you guys. Now, just give me a second, please. Okay. So we're done with this test. And just let me know if you cannot hear.
Hi, my name is Francisco, and welcome to this video series about marketing research. And in this first video, I want to talk to you about descriptive research designs. We're going to discuss the characteristics of descriptive studies, some of the most used methods, some applications in marketing, and in the end, some pros and cons. So first of all, let's start with the characteristics of descriptive studies. And the main characteristics of descriptive studies, as the name sort of suggests, is to describe a particular phenomena. We want to have a general overview about how consumers think and how consumers behave in relation to a brand, a company, a service, an experience. So we want to know, broadly speaking, how do consumers feel? How do consumers perceive a certain brand? What is their level of satisfaction with the service that is delivered? So we want to know this general overview. So a second characteristic is, if we want to have a general overview, we aim to generalize the results. We want in the end to be able to say, generally speaking, this is what consumers, this is how consumers think. It's, for example, when you have an election and you choose a small sample from the population, because we want to know, generally speaking, how do they feel about those candidates, or which one are they going to vote on. It's exactly the same thing. If we have, let's say, a music festival and imagine that many different brands did different brand activations in the festival. And then afterwards, we want to know, how do they feel about these brand activations? How much do they recall from these brand activations? And therefore, another characteristic is we have to work with large sample sizes. You cannot do a descriptive study with a small sample size. So if you want to have this general overview, obviously you cannot address everyone in the population of a study, but you should be aiming for a large sample size. So in the end, you can generalize these results and say, broadly speaking, this is how consumers feel about a particular brand or about a particular company. And also, descriptive studies, they generate pretty much only quantitative data. So in the end, you're going to be working with numbers and running different sort of statistical tests. So now let's talk about the methods. All right, so if you want to get this general overview about any sort of phenomena, how consumers think or how consumers behave, how do we do that? The two most common methods in marketing, first of all, is structured survey. And I want to make it really clear here, structured, because you have predefined questions and predefined answers. Yeah, so those traditional structured questionnaires that I'm pretty sure that you've answered some of them already. So you have those predefined questions and predefined answers that normally they come either as multiple choices for things for you to choose, or Likert type scales. For example, how are you satisfied with a certain brand, and ranging from 1, not at all satisfied, to 5 or 10 or 100 to very satisfied. If you saw a commercial on TV and they want to know how much you recollect from this commercial, how much do you recollect from the product that was mentioned, from 1, not at all recollect, to 5 or 10 or 100 fully recollect the message. So the first type is structured survey, which in the past used to be done by telephone, and many companies would call people with the questionnaire and go through the questions. They would do also by mail. You can also do this in person, but obviously in the last years most of it is done online. So you have a number of different companies that allow you to do this for free, companies such as quicksurveys.com or SurveyMonkey. Of course, they have a free version, a limited free version. If you want more tools and details, more options, they obviously need to pay a little bit for that. But yeah, you have a number of different tools available online. Just one quick suggestion in case you need to use some of those. Try to choose the ones where you can download the raw Excel sheet, because usually all of these platforms, they'll give you some descriptive statistics. So they're going to give you some averages, some frequencies, some means, some averages. But if you want to do any more advanced testing, you need to be able to download the raw data set. So make sure you check for that. And also, if you want to know how to develop a good structured online survey questionnaire, this is a little bit too long to explain in this video, but there's a next one in this series. Just follow up and I'll show you in very fine detail how you can create a great structured survey questionnaire. Second very common method for descriptive studies are observations, structured observations. So in structured observations, usually researchers, they have predefined categories that they're looking for, and then they analyze the behaviors of people, and every time people behave in a particular way, or when participants have certain characteristics, then they'll simply tick on those categories. So let me give you an example. In supermarkets, so I usually tell my students that when you go into a supermarket, you have these signs that will tell you, smile, you're being watched. That's not just to see if people are stealing, that's also for observational studies. For example, if you have senior consumers, all of their products should be of easy reach, because if a senior consumer is trying to pick up a product which is too high up in the shelf, that can be dangerous, or he or she can fall, or the product can fall on them, and obviously that's not a good thing. The same applies for children. So in observational studies, you can see, let's say that you have a category for a risk, and when a consumer picks up a certain type of product, and then you can mark that, and then you can know which type of product, or in which alley, or which number of senior consumers went through that alley and exposed themselves to that potential danger. Another example would be for crowd management. So for crowd management, there are lots of different observational studies are done. So if you have a music festival, and then you have different stages. Once a band ends, where's the crowd going to? How many people go into direction A? How many people go into direction B? The ones that go into direction A, what are the things that they're doing? These are all things that you can measure in observational studies. Another form of observational studies is content analysis, which is a bit too complex for me to explain here briefly in this video, but you can look up more on it. But it's basically a systematic way in which you can quantify non-numerical objects of investigation, like commercials, music. I did in the past a study on websites. So you have predefined categories, like where's the menu placed, where's the search engine box placed, different types of icons, different types of banners, positioning of banners, use of colors, and all of these become categories. Every time you look at a website, you start marking those things. So so content analysis is a form of observational studies, but this is a bit more complicated. But you can have a look on it, and I would suggest looking for an author called Causal. He's one of the main ones that have written in content analysis. Yeah, and other applications in marketing, there are multiple ones. Personally, I think that descriptive studies is something that all companies, it doesn't matter what they are, they should be doing descriptive studies permanently to see what people think about their brands, about their services, about the experiences that they provide. Also with competitors, so you can do a cross comparison to see this broad overview of what consumers think of your brand and your product compared to competitors. And there are many different types of measurements that are done in marketing, like brand attitude, brand recognition, satisfaction, which is by far the most evaluated concept in descriptive studies, service quality, risk perception, purchase intention, visual appeal of products. These are all factors that can be measured in descriptive studies. And to finish up, some pros and cons. The pros of descriptive studies is that it's fast to do, it's fast to set up, it's fast to collect data, and will allow managers to be able to have this overview. And when you have multiple data collection periods, when you have longitudinal data collection, you can even see the overall pattern of consumers' perceptions and behaviors. So if you're doing descriptive studies, and if possible, I would definitely suggest to do longitudinal studies so you can have multiple points of data collection. The negative side of it is that although you have this general overview, you don't know in depth what consumers think. So if you do multiple measurements of service quality, and you see that in the winter you have a lower service quality compared to in the summer, why is that? The descriptive studies will not tell you this. For this you need a different type of research design, which is exploratory study. So in descriptive studies you won't answer these questions of why certain things happen. You get this general overview, which is very important, but you won't know the reasons why, and you also don't know cause and effect relationships. What is causing consumers to have this particular opinion. So again, as I mention a lot to my students, descriptive studies is very much like you taking your temperature. If you take a temperature with a thermometer, you will know that you have 36. Why do you have 36? The thermometer will not tell you, but it's still really important to measure what your temperature is. So yeah, so in a nutshell, this is what descriptive studies are about. Don't forget to discuss it in details with the professor to which you're taking the marketing research class. There's a different number of marketing research books in the description here. I'm going to link also an article where you can find lots of different marketing research books that hopefully are going to be helpful for you. Hope you enjoy. If you feel so inclined, subscribe to the channel. And yeah, all the
So how's the class doing? Are you guys doing well? Okay. I guess there's the times for you now is to do some quizzes, tests, and so many things. So you're probably a little bit busy now. Now, let me say one thing before we start the lecture. I'm still getting emails probably until now. I was very clear about that, what time the last email I will accept. Now, I will give an exception this time, but next time, please, if you do that, I would not accept your quiz or test. So imagine you're in a class and by a certain time you're not handing it and you're leaving it until everybody goes home, and then you give it to somebody because I would not be available, and this is what it's done. So if you're sending your quizzes late, then next time I would not accept it. So I just wanted to let you know about this. Now, I assume you had a few tests and quizzes this semester now. Everybody, I hope you can see the screen. And let's talk about descriptive and casual research studies. It's chapter 5. So in this class, what it will happen, you will be able to explain the purpose of an advantage of a survey research design. You will describe the types of survey method, what kind of survey methods. Discuss the factor influencing your choice of surveys. explain the experiment and the types of variables used in the causal design, define test, marketing, and evaluate its usefulness in a marketing research. Now, the quantitative method of primary data is collection involved in the large sample. See, we said in the last class that first thing we do is a secondary data. We try to collect the data that's available in a market, on the internet or in a library, and if it's not good enough, then we go to the primary data collection. So this is where we do data collections. The selection of descriptive research design is based on the nature of initial problem or the opportunity. So you want to see your design and research you're going to do, it's what's the reason for it? Are you trying to solve a problem? Is the sales going down? Is the people trying to take your competitive products, they take it better than you? Or is it the opportunity that you're trying to expand or you bring a new product? So that's where is the, affect the design of your descriptive research. As the video said, the descriptive research is actually describing the numbers. So it's not a descriptive as a describing things. This is saying the numbers of that's what is the deceiving word. So it's describing the numbers that you have. That's called descriptive research. And your design is also depend on the research questions and what you're trying to also to get. What's your objective? So you might have so many objectives, but you're trying to select whether the price is up or down will affect how the consumer perceive your product. So method of data collection is you can ask questions or you can observe. Now there is different type of ways of asking a questions, and there is different type of way of observing. Survey research method, research procedures for collecting a large amount of data using question and answer format. Yes, as you know, you have been running to, surveys, phone calls. Some people do surveys on the mall. You go in the mall and you will see people stopping you and collecting information. They can be sending you to the through the mail questionnaires. So it requires, when you do a primary data, it requires a lot of research, lots of data collections, because if you are, targeting a large community, the more your samples, the more is close to reality. So if you take 100% samples, that means 100% close to almost reality. If you take 50%, there is a level of error that you need to calculate in it. Now, the advantage of survey method is can accommodate a large sample of size, so that results can be generalized to the target population. It's produce a precise enough estimate to identify even a small differences. So if you're generating a large sample, you can, the larger is the sample, the easier you can estimate or identify the small differences in the survey. It's easy to administer and you can record it. These days, there's so many ways of doing it. You can facilitate the advanced statistical analysis. When you collect the data, you can utilize the analysis, statistical analysis in it. So you can say how many, what's the percentage under the curve, what's the percentage out of the mean of the curve. So it's usually 5% extreme from the both side, or 10% extreme from the both side. What's the mean of people, most of the people. So the best word you can put it, say, what's the majority of the people like to do this or to buy this at this price, something like that. The disadvantage, question that accurately measures the respond attitude and behavior can be challenging to develop. So the behavior might be different than the attitude that you have. And it's very difficult to do in-depth data. So people might answering you something, but they might have something else that motivate them to answer this way. And that's where you are, you know, you need to clarify that part. And most of the time, you notice that how many times you get this survey and you just throw it in a garbage, or you just don't answer it, or you delete it from your email. So there is a low response rates can be another problem. So you might be sending 10,000 survey, and you get only 100 or 1,000 of them. So there is a low response also. That one of the problems that they have. There is also a sampling error. The and it says like the difference between the finding based on the sample and the true value of population. So if I have 30 million people and I make a survey of 10 people, that's not the true sampling. And because those 10 people could be a very biased towards something, and you might not get an answer, a perfect answer when you survey 30 million people, but you cannot do that. So that's where you put an error in sampling. So that's one way of finding out the sampling error. The other thing is could be caused by method of sampling use. So you might be going during the winter time, asking people, what do you think about an orange ice cream? While it's snowing, so people would not be able to answer this question. Or this, as we said, the size of the sample. So it's reduced by increasing the size of samples. As we said, the more the sample you take, the closer to the reality, and using the appropriate sampling methods. The respondent error. So the respondent failed to participate in survey or provide a response that do not reflect their true. We said that they don't want to, you know, participate in any survey, so they just walk away in the mall, or they say no, thank you, or they don't answer the phone, or they just delete the survey. The other thing is the fact that um, he's responding, but he's not responding with the right answers. And there is a reason for that, is the fact that he might see that you want him to answer in a certain way. So he is answering you in a certain way that you like, or you want to probably he want to cover some information that he doesn't want to feel, he doesn't feel like it's appropriately to give away, so he's giving you certain answer that's not correct. So there is a non-response error, which is a systematic bias that occurs when the final sample differed from the planned one. And there is a response error. Respondents have impaired memories or do not want to respond accurately. So these are two things that you need to consider when you do a survey. Now, on a detailed base, the major type of surveys, you have in-home interview. So you're going in their home and you make an interview, or you take them in the office and you give them an interview. And this is one type of survey. You send them an email, a mail, and he opens the mailbox and there is a questionnaire. He fills it up, and usually he doesn't need to put a stamp. He just put it back in the office and send back to you. Um, there is also in a mall intercept. So you you probably run to one while you're shopping in a mall, to people is asking you your feedback, certain question. Pretty sure if you have a mobile or you have a telephone, you have uh, run to a traditional telephone interview. So people is asking and says, can I have 5 minutes of your time? And can you answer these questions? Now, the first thing that comes in your mind, sometimes you think, okay, they're trying to sell me something. And that's where you denying the interviews sometimes over the phone. And you have also got what you call a CAT, computer assisted telephone interview. You call somebody, it's calling 1-800 number or no number shows, and then you pick up the phone and there is an answer machine and is asking you questions. Press one if you this one, press two if you that, press three if you that. So this is the computer, what do you call, CAT. And there is still growing in the field of wireless phone surveys. You haven't run to so many of them, but they might be, sending you to your mobile questionnaires where you answer these questions. Now, some big malls in USA, I've seen them in the Middle East, they do send that while you are shopping. So they wanted to collect your data, what kind of shopping while you are in a mobile. But how do they get the number? Is done two way. One through the Bluetooth, if your Bluetooth is on, so they can push the survey. The second one is they have an application, and because the application provide you for the whole mall different products, discount and or free parking, something like that, and they can push their survey on it. So that's the wireless uh, phone surveys. Um, as we said, there is a self-administrative one. So that's the first one is a person administrative, but somebody is there who administrating the survey. The second one is the self-administrative is, as we said, it's a mail, online surveys. You have the mail panel survey, and drop-off survey. The mail panel survey is usually they send to companies, and they're asking like 5, 6 people to answer the same question, and you have to mail it back. And the drop-off survey is somebody comes in and really gives the front desk a survey, so that has to be answered by them. Is there any question? Okay. Um, Usually the adaptabilities, the trained interview can quickly adapt to respond differences. So in a person survey, um, uh, when somebody in interviewing you, sometimes he can adapt to whether your language or your culture or your behavior, he can adapt it and get questions answered from you. uh, not everybody is really willing to do that. And the feedback during the question process interview can answer response. So that when you are being surveying some people, they usually like to see some feedback from you. They might ask you why you're asking these questions, or where is your companies, or what do you do, or what these questions are. So some feedback that you get, and usually you get a very good quality of response if you are doing in-person surveys in a very well manner. You might have a disadvantage possibility of record error. Interviewing may incorrectly record the response of the question. So they might say very quickly they want to rush, so they put yes, no, or 5 from 4. So they might be having an error there. An interviewer response interaction error. So they might, the interviewer might show something, reaction to certain question, and the person who's answering the questions, he might becomes more protective and would be answering you differently. So that's another way of you might run to a disadvantage, and usually very expensive because you have people, you're paying them at least minimum wage to question people in the mall or making phone calls and making these calls. The other surveys has of self advantage of and disadvantage of self-administrative surveys. We respond low cost per surveys. Response can be a very low. And just give me a second, please. I apologize. So a disadvantage is you minimize the flexibilities and you have a high response rates. Most of respond will not complete the return to the survey, so there is a high non-response rate, and the potential response error. So they might not be answering the questions incorrectly, or you are registering it wrong. So situational characteristics is basically, it talks that about selecting the appropriate survey methods, and so all depends on the situational characteristic, the survey. It's depend on the budget that you have, the time of completion, and the quality that they're looking for it. Are they looking for the completeness of the data? They just want to see some result, or how's the data is really fits into the surveys or the requirements. Also the task characteristics, how difficult is the the task. So in a winter, if they're asking you to stop, to stand outside and try to do some surveys, you might having some difficulties because it's cold, so you need to take some breaks. You need to wear more clothes. They should be. It depends on how difficult is the task itself, whether they want to stimuli respond. So whether they want to make sure that they are answering it, the questions in the certain weather time. So you need to make a survey where they are feeling very hot or feeling very cold, how they are answering these questions. And the amount of the information that asked from the respondents. So you might ask me 4 or 5 questions, they will be answering very quickly, or they might be asking 10 questions, which is takes forever. So that's one thing uh, you need to take into consideration, and how the topic is sensitive. The survey where it becomes a more personal, more going to be social acceptable. All these things can affect the questions and the questionnaires. Now, the response also is how diversities in it. Are we doing multiple choices? Are we doing an open end writing words in it? So that's also affecting the respondent surveys. The incidence rate percentage of general population, what's the percentage that we're doing the research for them? Are we covering 10%, or are we covering 1%, 5%, or 50%? And whether the respondents they can ability to of the interviewer and the respondent to participate in the question and answer interchange. So whether the response, if he has a while you're asking him a question, you're probably going to promote some questions he's going to need to ask you back. So that's also make it more complicated and takes more time and effort and cost. The other thing is willingness to participate and knowledge degree level. So it's like if you're doing a survey in Canada, for example, and you're talking to them about Kashmir problem, I don't think people in most of the people in some people in Canada would not be able to respond to that question. So that a degree of knowledge, it's really affecting the people of their answers. And for example, because if you're asking about how, if you're doing a survey for a car, different type of cars, and you're asking them about Tesla's qualifications, and they never been in Tesla, then would be very difficult for them because they don't have that much knowledge of how Tesla works and how it drives differently than the other cars, for example. So the knowledge level is a very important. The willingness to participate is also important. Now, the causal research design has two parts of it, basically. The first part is something that you call independent variables and dependent variables. And basically, it's driven from its names. Independent variables, they are variables who does not change. They are changing for other reason, but they're not changing for our survey, our research. So they are independent. Like if we say, as example, x equal with 2 plus y. The more y goes up, the more x will change. So a y is independent and x is dependent. So when we are measuring one thing, according to the changes to another thing. So if the another thing is going up and this one is going up, so the first one which moves up, that's an independent variable, and this will follow this and goes up with it, so it becomes dependent to this independent variable. And it could be a reverse one, and this would be increase and that would be lower. And a good example, when you are the income goes high, probably the best example, then once the income goes high, the consumption of let's say craft food goes down. So there is independent reverse variable. The more you have income, the consumption of craft food, the cheap food, goes down. The less you have income, the consumption of the craft food goes up. But if you're talking about direct income, the more income goes up, the more car purchase goes up. The more income goes down, the car purchase goes down. So if you notice that is the income is independent variable, and the dependent variable could be the car, or it could be the craft food. So these are the two things that how we measure the dependent and dependent. Now, it can be done in a different way, but you want to make sure that research collect the data using the experiment design. Experiment is the empirical investigation that tests for the hypothesis relationship between dependent and manipulated independent variable. What does that mean? It means that when you are doing a research and you wanted to find out something is how much is dependent to another thing, you want to make sure that it's really there is a relationship between them and there is no third party affecting the whole atmosphere or affecting your dependent value. So you want to separate the whole changing atmosphere. You're going to keep it constant in all these atmospheres. And or also you want to make sure nothing is affecting your dependent variable. So that's the experiment way of doing it. So the question was examining the causal relationship between variable focus on a specific influence of another variable on another. So you just want to make sure in a way you are controlling them, because if there is another variable changing, causing the change, then you cannot say this is causing, affecting the improvement or the increase or decrease to another. It should be very clear if they are well connected. Now, the nature experiment can explain as a cause and effect relationship between variables or constructs and determine why event occurred. See, the word we did talk about constructs, and we would come back again and we'll talk more about constructs. It is a word like satisfaction. So when you buy something, you increase your satisfaction with it. So that's not measurable. That's increase. You cannot measure it with one value, two value, three value. It is saying I increase my satisfaction. It's not. It doesn't have a unit to measure. So you might say, when I spend $10, I'm satisfied. When I spend $100, I'm more satisfied. $1,000, I'm way more satisfied. So there is no unit of measures in it. Um, the variable, a concept or a construct that can vary, have a more than one value. Uh, it could be a demographics, it could be the behavior, and it could be the attitude. So some of us, when they go and do certain shopping and certain stuff, your attitude change. You come out more positive, especially if you're going and if you notice, like if you're buying a T-shirt or from no names place, your attitude is different than when you go to known a place and you buy a T-shirt uh, uh, has a name on it or a tag that's famous. This attitude also can change the behavior that you are different when you wear branded names shirts than non-branded name shirts is also. So there's could be all these things they are a variable and they cannot be could be you can put units on them or you cannot put a unit. That's when it becomes, and if you cannot put it a unit, you can, that's what you call a construct a variable. So as we said, control variables that do not vary freely or systematically with independent variable. What does that mean? Should be changed as the independent variable manipulated. So you have dependent and independent variable. And independent variable, when it's a control, both of them, nothing is changing unless the independent moves up, then you see the dependent goes up, goes down, down, or reverse. So that's what is the control variables happening. Nothing from outside is being controlled. The extraneous variables not measured or controlled and may affect the dependent variables. So sometimes um, you cannot put a unit on something, but you can say, just say, when I'm happy, I go shopping in the stores. When I'm not happy, I don't shop in that store, something like that. So this is not a unit that you being happy or less happy if explain is measurable. Is just a status about you. Where you say sometimes it's happened when you talk overseas with your family, right away you go shopping. Uh, I notice some people do that. Or when they don't talk for a while, they're a little bit depressed. They go buy for them lots of ice cream or something. So this unit is not measurable, but will affect in a measurable things or non-measurable one. So these are the extraneous variables. Now, the validity, the extent to which the conclusion drawn from an experiment are true. So once we do a research, we need to make sure the research is valid and the result that we are taking out of that research is also valid. Now, we brought an example last time. We said that what they did for example, in Ford, they put people under the lights and people on a regular situation, and they said they saw the people under the lights produced more. So in the first time we look at it, we think it's a valid data. The more you increase the lighting, the more productions happen. But then they found out that people they put them in a dim light, less light, they also produce more. And here where it gives us an indication that it's not valid when we talk about increasing or decreasing the light will end up producing more. So the whole research was invalid. And then they found out that if the people is being watched, then they are producing more. So here is what's a valid research, where people get watched more, they produce more, watch less, they produce less. So this is what you call a valid research. So sometimes you see some research, you think it's a valid, but when you dig in deeper, you raise some question, you find out, no, they're not valid. Now, the internal validity, the extent to which a research design accurately identify the causal relationship. So how this one is causing this one very clearly. The external validity, the extent to which a causal relationship found in a study can be expected to be true for the entire target population. Let me give you back to the same example. Now, in Ford, they found out if people getting watched, they produce more. But if we take the same thing and we say, if people getting watched in an IT company or people getting watched in consulting company, they would not produce more. So in that case, there is an internal validities, but this not applicable to other cases. So you want to make sure when you do the study, it's on for that case only, or you want to make sure this case is applicable to all these cases, the rest of them. It depends on how you see that. So as we said, the laboratory experiment, the causal research designed to conduct an artificial setting where dependent and independent value having effect on each, they have an effect, cause and effect between them, and there is no third thing will be affecting the situation. The field experiment, causal research design that manipulate independent variable in order to measure the dependent in a natural situation. In a manipulation, like, you know, say for example, somebody pretend that you know, he is blind, and they want to see the reaction of the people who is dealing with this blind people. So he's manipulating the situation, and this is where he controlling just to see the feedback of it. And it performed in a natural setting usually, except there was somebody who is pretending that he's blind and cannot cross the street, and how the people are reacting in a certain time of the day, and whether or whatever the case. So that the test marketing, do you have any question? Okay. Test marketing uses the control field experiment to gain information on a specified market performance indicators. We usually, as we said, is the most common type is a field experiment. So you go outside, you pretend certain case of scenario, and you test the market through that thing. The other way of its applications is the pilot test a new product or a product modification. So you have a certain product and you tell them, well, can you put the cream on your hand? What do you feel about it? Or you can spray a little bit on that. What do you think of the smell? That's a pilot testing before the product comes out in the market. So you take people reaction and the feedback before you produce it. Examine the product's strength, weakness, or inconsistency in a marketing strategy. So you have a perfume, you spray it on one, and it says nice. The second one goes bad. The third one goes nice. The fourth one goes bad. So that's inconsistent. Meanwhile, if you have 10 people says this is nice and one person says bad, that's more consistent. So if the answer of the survey is a consistent, then the product, it's a good testing for it. Okay. So we will talk about the explore to explore the different option of marketing metrics element, and on the next class we'll be talking more about how these descriptive surveys versus the quantitative qualitative surveys that we are doing. Do you have any question? Okay. Wonderful. Okay. So today, because you wrote the quiz, we just want to make a short announcement. I'm still waiting for your some of you for your proposal regarding of the final assignment as a group. We already set as a group. You need to talk to each other as a group and let me know what's your probably proposal is going to be on what kind of survey you're going to conduct. It could be anything that you have in your mind on a product or on a say a product that you think you can launch it here, or a product that you think that you can launch it in India or in anywhere else, or vice versa, or a service. You can do this proposal.
Sir,
Yes.
right, sir, we can like launch any product like dresses or something else.
Whatever you have in mind, it could be product, it could be service. So
okay, you just have to advertise or service. That's everything.
yeah. I mean, the whole concept is that we wanted to see that if you you use the marketing research process to approve or disapprove of launching that product or launching that service, or you might see something that is not perfect. So you want to do another different type of studies to say how I'm going to improve that studies, how I'm going to improve that product, for example. You can do that type of survey also. So your hand is a free. You just need to sit with your group and decide about what kind of product or a service you want to do, and you select a marketing, you do the marketing research for it.
Thank you.
Is that clear?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. If you don't have any question, feel free to go. But I will be expecting you to also visit the Padlet, leave your thoughts. It's very important for me to see, but write your name before you leave your thought there. That would be wonderful. Okay, guys. Well, once I open your email, I will send you your quiz. I will send you that I received your quiz. So wait for me within 24 hours or 48 hours maximum to get a notification saying I have received your quiz or test. Okay? Well, thank you very much and have a good day. Bye-bye.